World class. Jim Crockett Promotions. Big time wrestling. Mid-South. $2 Late Fee presents Territory Marks with Paul London and Zach Schaefer. The show that celebrates matches from the glory days of professional wrestling. From one man who lives it and another man who loves it.
All right, this is the final episode of our crossover month. The culmination you've all been waiting for. Territory Marks is here. Podcasting After Dark has been a part of $2 Late Fees crossover all month long, and today we have a very special guest on Territory Marks with us to talk about a very special person. Joining us, Paul London and I, is Sleazy C, Corey from Podcasting After Dark. Corey, what is happening?
Oh, thanks, dude. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. Not only am I your co-host on Podcasting After Dark, but I'm also a fan of Territory Marks. And, Zach knows my background with wrestling or lack thereof. So that's kind of a big deal. And we'll get into it, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah, we will. I want to get your background on this, but Paul, for everyone who is not caught up on this, September all month long is Podcasting After Dark, $2 Late Fee. We covered the movie Roadhouse here on $2 Late Fee, and then broke down the movie on Podcasting After Dark, and then interviewed Marshall Teague, aka Jimmy Reno from Roadhouse. If you've heard all those episodes, if you haven't, go back and listen to those episodes. But before this all started, the inception of the crossover, and when it was revealed that Corey had never seen Roadhouse, and he up until maybe a month ago,
you just blew Paul's mind.
Paul's gonna lose it. After that happened, we said, okay, we got to do an episode for Roadhouse. That's our crossover movie. What are we gonna do for Territory Marks? Well, we got to talk about Terry Funk, and then sadly, a week before we're recording today, Terry Funk passed away at the age of 79. And there's no coincidences. If you talk to our good friend Richard Horowitz, he doesn't believe in them. Things all happen for a reason. And here we are talking about Terry Funk, the man, the myth, the one and only. And Paul, you have a very strong, close connection with Terry Funk, do you not?
Beat it, Dad. Yeah, I was very fortunate to, fall into the camp training system, I guess, of his brother, Dory Jr. And it was through my training and then eventual friendship and working relationship with Dory that I had met Terry. And it was Dory that really kind of presented a lot of opportunities for me that really kind of paid out. But it was Terry who was very, so he had done this, I guess, these shoot interviews. They had asked him during this interview, who are we, who should we look out for? Like, who are the people on the rise? And I guess I was the only one that he said, but he said me, and that helped get me into like Ring of Honor. At the time, this was probably like 2002. So to have someone of that stature kind of vouch for me, and he had, he was just always very forthcoming with his stories and his advice and everything. He was just very, not for everybody, but like if he knew that you were legit. He once asked me to drive up to Lubbock from Austin. And that's no easy drive. That's about 9 hours. And yeah. And so there was this company called XWF. And it had uh, some stars. I mean, it was pretty much kind of run by Jimmy Hart, and they were trying to kick it off after, I guess, kind of after WCW, and everything was kind of in limbo in that little period there before they kind of reemerged as a secondary brand. But there was this company XWF, and they had a lot of rising stars, and they had some, not so rising stars. And so, anyways, he asked me to come to Lubbock. I kind of tricked two friends into going with me. It's like, well, bring your gear. There might be an opportunity. You never know. Which, you never know, right? Always bring your gear.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we get up to like this big auditorium or armory or something. It was pretty big building, but I just remember that's the first time I met Roddy Piper as well, who would later go on to be a friend of mine and a helper of Wisdom. But I just remember Terry after the show. I wasn't able to get a match or anything, but it was still neat to be in that environment and meeting everybody and seeing, that level of a show going on, because there was pretty decent production behind it. But I just remember Terry invited me, like I'm in the locker room and he's calling me over, and he started trying to talk to me about my thoughts on the show, but he's like getting naked at the time, and he's like just sitting there as comfortable as could be, just sitting there. I think he was like covered up with like a beer or something, and
he's got a koozie on his
yeah,
culo.
yeah. So I'm just like trying to not look at the funker, but like trying to be respectful. Yeah,
that's what he calls his private area, by the way, the funker.
That's right. It's a
right down here, a little funker.
It's a funktastic voyage, apparently. You get onto the Eager Beaver out there in Amarillo. No, I'm kidding. I'm just making all this up. But yeah, Lubbock was a fun little trip. But it was just neat to be invited firsthand by him, whether I got to work or not. So, but yeah, he was just always very helpful and instrumental in any kind of advice I might need whenever I needed it. But him and Dory were just, can't ask for better trainers and storytellers than that, really. So
oh yeah, I mean he's we've covered a couple of his matches on this show already.
Yeah,
I covered the Steamboat Funk match from Clash of Champions 7, which took place the year we're actually going to be talking about with Funk, and you talked about, of course, Funk and Lawler having their legendary brawl.
Mm-hmm.
And we will probably cover more Terry Funk matches down the road. He's an integral part in my life as a wrestling fan growing up, and in 1989 specifically was a huge year for me as a wrestling fan. And obviously with you've got intimate closeness with Terry Funk, obviously. So there's a lot going on there.
I'll tell you this other quick story real quick that Terry once told
do.
me. He was saying he was in Corpus Christi. He's like, all the Mexicans down there, it's easy to rile them all up and everything. So we'd have security escort us from the ring to the back. So this Coliseum or wherever they were at, these Mexicans wanted to kill me. They were coming at me, clawing at me. Security was getting me to the back. They ended up taking me right from the back, straight into the car, like the getaway car, basically. And we're sitting there, and making our way to the hotel. And I can't get comfortable, and I'm sweating. I'm in my gear. And one of the helpers or whoever the guy was that was there, he was like sitting next to him, and I just couldn't get comfortable. And then he was like, "Terry, holy shit, you have a dagger in your back." So like somehow from the ring, yeah, so he had gotten stuck with a dagger from leaving the ring after his match to exit the building, and like kind of just went straight through to the back to the vehicle. And somehow in that commotion, because it wasn't guardrails, it was usually like a rope or something, or if anything, right?
Right.
So
kind of like what we talked about with World Class Wrestling, where
yeah,
they come through the audience to get to the ring.
Yeah, these girls are making out with the Von Erichs, and
Yeah.
You know.
And meanwhile, he's getting a dagger in his back. So
Yeah.
good times.
Yeah.
And not feeling it too. So that's adrenaline is a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Well, before we kind of go more off on Terry Funk and pay tribute to this legendary, wonderful person, Corey, you know, when I asked Corey to come on the show with us, Paul, he jumped at the chance because it was like, oh, I would love to be a part of Territory Marks, you know?
yeah, we're expanding the territory.
Exactly. We gotta branch it out.
That's right.
But Corey's knowledge, well, Corey, I'll let you describe. What's your depth of knowledge when it comes to professional wrestling?
Yeah, so Zach and I have discussed this before on the because it used to be TV Obscura. We would do a yearly wrestling thing, and I think that kind of spun off into this. But I've talked about it before. But just to kind of get your listeners on board and Paul on board, I'm a child of the 80s. I was born in 78. Aliens is my favorite movie. I saw it in the theater with my dad when I was 8 years old. And I kind of always grew up with huge fans of wrestling back home in Maryland. And I'm excited to talk about the Baltimore, the Wrestle War 89, because that took place in Baltimore. But my friends in Maryland growing up, Luke and Xaire, massive wrestling fans. So I would, watch pay-per-views with them and stuff like that. And then I moved out to LA and met up with Zach and Diallo, and both of them were massive wrestling fans. So while I never watch much wrestling on my own, I've always been surrounded by people who are into it. So I've always had this, I've had an understanding of it. I never looked at it as it was like fake or something like that. I got it. I understood it. It just wasn't sort of my thing on my own. But I always had a great time whenever I hung out with my friends and we did watch it. And I do remember, seeing Terry Funk, and I remember a lot of these guys that we're going to be talking about today, but specifically Terry Funk, I do remember him, and I always love seeing him and watching him in these matches now. I was like, oh man, he's so much fun, but I remember Sting, and I remember, obviously Ric Flair and stuff, but my buddy Xaire is a big Great Muta fan, so I kind of popped for him, to use a wrestling term. I popped for Great Muta when I saw him. But that's kind of my background. Again, a child of the 80s. I grew up watching the cartoon, Rock and Wrestling cartoon, stuff like that. But I didn't watch a lot of just matches on my own. But I would never be upset if I was at someone's house and we all watched wrestling. I'd be like, cool, this is awesome. I key in on other people's excitement level towards it, and I really enjoy watching things that someone's really excited about, even if I'm not particularly into it. So
no, that helps, right? The other person's excitement helps boost yours, even if you've seen this maybe 1,000 times or.
Yep, exactly. So I had a blast watching all this stuff, all the links and everything Zach sent to prep for this. I had a blast watching all of that, and I'm excited to get into it. But that's my perspective. That's where I'm going to be coming from in this episode.
Yeah.
I go back to this place. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go now.
No, you go now.
You go now.
I go back to this. I go to this place in my head where I always think back, man, if we were all kids hanging out together, because we're all relatively the same age, Paul and I would be like uber wrestling fans freaking out over stuff, and Corey would come over with his action figure. He's like, okay, this is cool. I just want to watch it.
I just want to hang out with the guys and watch it.
No idea what I'm talking. Dustin would come in and he's like, where's the Cheetos at? Oh, you got Cheetos? I brought Ruffles, and then we would be marking out, and Corey, you'd be like, yeah, but when's RoboCop coming out?
Yeah,
when's RoboCop?
Right. RoboCop coming out, the whole thing. And I'll just throw out that as a kid, I loved the Road Warriors. I thought they were awesome. But my favorite move in wrestling is the Frankensteiner. I always thought that was cool.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's a good one. What it's evolved into is something else, but I mean, to have someone like that doing it was incredible. That was Scott Steiner at his most athletic and most mulleted, which I think is probably why he doesn't and can't do it anymore, is because he doesn't have the glorious mullet, the Michigan mullet.
The wind.
Yeah.
Catching it.
Yeah. It's aerodynamic. Like helps slow you down mid-air.
Well, one of the things, Paul, one of the things that I love about this show that we do is I'll stumble upon clips that I wasn't intending to watch. And there is relevance with this. Yeah. Thunderfoot, for example. He's loading his boot. His boot is loaded.
He's unloading it. It's getting rid of it.
I stumbled upon a clip of Funk, Terry Funk, in '89 when he had Funk's Grill, which we will talk about, and he's interviewing the Steiner brothers, and it's hilarious because it's clearly improv going on just between the three of them, and Scott Steiner's just standing there nodding at everything. And it's really Rick Steiner who's like leading the charge with everything. Rick Steiner kind of plays a goofy, dim-witted guy, and he's fondling Terry Funk's earring. He's like, what is that? What is that? And Terry Funk's like, it's my earring. It's my earring.
You simple-minded people, it's once again time for Funk's Grill, and have I got a surprise for you today. I've got the two finest brothers in professional wrestling, two great athletes, the Steiners brothers, Rick and Scott. You know, I'm a married man, Rick, and I don't fool around, but I've got a couple of beautiful, beautiful daughters. And I'll tell you something, I wouldn't...
How old are they? How old are they?
I wouldn't change them for anything in the world.
What color hair? Long hair?
That's
Short
none
hair?
of your business.
Well, just...
But if I had the possibility to have some boys, which I wish for once in a while, I'd want them to be just like the two.
Yeah, us.
No, I'd want them to be just like you, Scott.
What about me? What about me?
Well, you're just fine, Rick.
Yeah,
you really
all right.
are. But Scott's got some other possibilities after professional wrestling.
Oh,
I
me
think-
too. I thought about being like a sheriff or a fireman. Doing all... Look at that. Hold still. What is that?
I'm trying to tell you that is my earring, but I am
like
trying
that.
to tell you that I admire Scott and you and the way that you wrestle and the way that you look in professional wrestling.
How long was Funk's Grill on for? And I assume it was probably it was a segment during shows, right? But I'm watching it now and I'm like, well, this would be a perfect YouTube channel, like if this was happening, type of thing. Right. But I enjoyed Funk's Grill, the episode or the segment that we watched. I thought that was fun.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, Terry Funk. Oh, go
no,
ahead.
just according to Rick, it's Ric Flair even says it's the greatest talk show on American television.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, he's really putting it over, whether it's sarcasm or not. I would watch it, like you said, I would watch it. You would hope it would be a real show. And I love Terry in all his talking segments, obviously with the exception of those that he's about to go out and do matches, his ability to find the gaudiest Western wear, or just the who I would want to think that he gets his Western shirts at Goodwill or something, or I don't know, but I love his bizarre fashion,
like the poncho thing that he's wearing and stuff like that.
Well, just even in the segments where he has a shirt that has fringe on the arms and on lapels and it suits him, but it's no one in their right mind would ever think of buying this shirt.
Or his boots too.
His boots, yeah, with the jeans tucked in.
That was the first time where I'm like, is that cool? And then we obviously we wrap that up with Marshall Teague. Marshall Teague, who was our guest for Podcasting After Dark and $2 late fee. I point blank asked him, Paul, and I shouted you out too. I said, I want to know this reason why cowboys wear their boots on the outside, with the pants tucked in. But Terry Funk, on the other hand, and he's wearing them in one match or one vignette. They're like these kind of baggy white boots that look a little saggy white boots.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's not really rocking. That's more kind of like cock blocking.
It's the old farmer on the range who just wants to slip on boots because he doesn't know.
I guess so.
Or mud and boots. Come on now.
Before we just jump into Funfest and our adoration of Terry Funk, Roadhouse came out in 1989.
Yes.
That's why we're focusing on the year of Terry Funk from 89. This format's going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. It's more of a free-form discussion talking about the year of Terry Funk in 89 when Roadhouse came out. Up until this point, he didn't retire from wrestling, but he took a break and he made a couple movies. He made Over the Top for one, and then he made, I think that was in 87, right? Or 86?
87.
Yep. And then he made Roadhouse a little bit later. when Roadhouse came out in May of 89. And in May of 89, Terry Funk makes his comeback to the National Wrestling Alliance.
So how long of a period of time? Because Ric Flair kept saying 5 years. I think
Yeah, I
he's
heard
like
5 years. That's what I
Okay.
heard too. But I don't know how accurate that was. Like, I don't think he had just been out of wrestling completely, right? Because had we not seen him in some of the stuff we've covered, Zach, like over the previous
we
5
have,
years?
and you know, I'm not sure how seriously I take Ric Flair's recollection.
I agree. He's going to say what he needs to say to come out on top. He's the ultimate opportunist. That's why he's the
That's
nature
right.
boy.
In 89, he was actually I think Terry Funk said he's 35, and I'm like, well, he's actually 40 in 1989.
He loves his stories, man. I told you.
According to like Wikipedia, for example, his career, he took a break from 86 to 89. So 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense, right?
I mean, you would think Roadhouse was probably produced in 88,
Yeah.
right? But then, you know, Over the Top was probably, 86, because it came out in, I think, 87.
Yeah, because if Roadhouse is hitting in May, this culminates, I think, in November, right? With the that Thunderdome match. No, well, it's October, right? Because it's Halloween and everything.
Right.
So the movie was already out by this point, by the end of what we're going to be discussing, essentially.
Right.
Yeah, this rivalry starts in May. We're really focusing on his rivalry with Flair of 89 as well, Ric Flair. This rivalry starts in May and it culminates in November. So, you know, Roadhouse had just come out. It's funny because Flair comments that Funk's off making movies with Sylvester Stallone.
And that was like 4 years prior.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it hadn't brought up Patrick Swayze yet because, you know, Roadhouse had just come out.
Yeah, and it was probably in the process of bombing, too, at that point.
Yeah, because it did not do very well.
Yeah.
Listen to that episode where we talk about that on $2 Late Fee and Podcasting After Dark. But yeah, so Funk reemerges as a judge for a championship match between Nature Boy Ric Flair and at the time champion Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
And this is Wrestle War.
Wrestle War 89.
Yeah, baby.
This was the finale of their of the storyline between Flair and Steamboat. Steamboat beat Flair for the title, and then they had a 2 out of 3 falls match, which ended controversially, and and then they had their wrap up match where, you know, Flair turned face. So Flair and Steamboat, the match finishes. Funk comes into the ring. Let's just hit that bell. Funk comes in the ring to congratulate Flair with Flair and Jim Ross. And, well, I'll let you guys discuss. What kind of happens next, Paul?
Well, I thought this was just really well done and just extremely entertaining, just because Terry's obviously such a great instigator, but he's just so odd in his delivery with things that, you know, he congratulates him and they both kind of acknowledge it, like, all right, well, thank you. And
it's very awkward.
Yeah. Well, and then he doesn't leave, and he's like, but I really mean, and so he keeps kind of like cutting back in every time they think, you know, and then, you know, it's like a little game that he just keeps kind of playing with them, and then, you know, he issues the challenge, and then that's where it starts to turn. It's just like it's pretty layered. Like the thing's kind of pretty layered. Just in seeing this challenger emerge out of nowhere, but it only works because he has such a storied past. He is such a known person, so it wouldn't have mattered if he would have taken 10 years off. But he, you know, he's the master.
Hey, Rick. I want to be the first to congratulate you on being the new world's champion.
Terry, thank you very much. We do appreciate the judges being here.
Hey, Rick, I also want to say that if it would have gone 60 minutes, that I would have liked to have, I would have voted for Ric Flair, because I think that you're the greatest wrestler in the world today.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Terry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Terry.
You know, champ, It went past 35, 40 minutes. It was nip and tuck both.
You know, I would also like to go ahead, and I'd also like to go ahead and be the first one to challenge Ric Flair to that new championship.
Well,
Terry, I'm honored that you'd like to get in the picture, but as the wrestling fans know, you've been an active, you've been in Hollywood, Sylvester Stallone, while I've been being the world champion. And we got a top 10. We got a top 10 that the world champion is obligated to wrestle. And that's why we are number one.
Wait a minute. Are you really saying that I'm not a contender?
No, what I'm saying, Terry, is that you are a great wrestler, but right now you're rubbing shoulders with Sylvester Stallone and not the world champion.
No. I was just asking, you think that I'm not good enough? You're saying that I'm not good enough, aren't you, Rick?
I'm not saying that at all, Terry.
Yes, you are.
If you want me to look you in the eye and tell you that I got a problem with wrestling a guy that's been out in Hollywood for 5 years, it's the bottom line, but I'm looking at the top 10, and you're not in the top 10.
No, Rick, hold it.
Let me conclude this by saying thank you. I'm honored, everybody. Win, lose, or draw, Ric Flair.
No. Rick, please let me just say one more thing. I was just kidding you about going ahead and wanting to challenge you. I didn't want to really challenge you. I was just kidding you. So, dadgummit, let's go ahead.
that was beef. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Hey!
And what I love about this segment too is that, he comes in and he basically kind of meanders around the fact that he wants a title shot. Look, there's a top 10. And this was at the time, Corey, this was a time when there was a legit top 10. And I love that in wrestling.
Yeah.
That's something I think that's sorely missed.
It was at the back of the magazines for each company. They had the list of top 10s in the back of the magazines.
For every
major
territory,
promotion,
right?
yeah.
So that's why Flair was like, yeah, no, dude, like, you're not here anymore. You've been in Hollywood this whole time.
Yeah.
Watching all these things, the promos are my favorite parts of the wrestling. And I love these interactions. I think they're a lot of fun. And I give mad respect to the improv skills that all these guys have. But I didn't see where it was going. I was like, where's this going to go and everything? I was like, I was intrigued. I was like on the edge of my seat. And that's from someone who doesn't really watch a lot of wrestling. And I think that's a testimony to Ric Flair and Terry Funk's, interactions there and everything. But I like the drama. I got the drama. I understood the drama, even though I wasn't, into it at the time. My question at this point, Ric Flair and Sting, their faces, right? And then Funk and Muda, my buddy Xavier said they were part of the JTEX Corporation.
Yes.
Are they heels this time?
They are, but they haven't formed yet.
Okay.
The JTEX Corporation has not formed yet so where we're at, I was a huge Ricky Steamboat mark at this time, and when he lost to Flair, I was bummed out about it because he was my favorite wrestler at the time, right? And then Flair wins, and Flair is now a face, a full-fledged face.
I'm sorry, is he a face because he won? Is it because of that fact?
It's in the way he won,
okay, got
right?
it.
Because they basically congratulate each other, and there's a send-off where, Steamboat has kind of ceremoniously passed the torch over to Flair as far as being the top face in the company. And Sting is around at this time, but they're not like aligned just yet, right? And then, of course, Funk utters the line, well, I was just kidding about that. I was just, dadgummit, wanted you to shake my hand, right? And then it's such a beautiful moment because you're right, Corey. There's tension there. You're like, wait a minute. This is the end of a pay-per-view. This is the end of the match, right? We're supposed to go. The program's over. Yeah. Like, where's this going?
And Ric Flair's been wrestling for like 40 minutes, so he's tired and everything too.
Right.
Exactly. And I had never seen anything up until this point at this moment like this as well. And so I didn't know where it was going. And then, of course, from that moment on, Funk sucker punches Flair.
Yep.
Much to Jim Ross's surprise. Whoa! And what ends up culminating in a possible career-ending injury. Paul, what does Terry Funk do to Ric Flair?
Well, he sends him outside, doesn't he? He sends him outside.
Yeah.
And then sends him over the guardrail, kind of wailing on him throughout.
Yeah.
And it's like the little guardrail, so he kind of steps over it, brings Flair back over, and then carries him up onto like the announcer's table. And I was sitting here thinking, like, oh man, if they both stand on this thing, it's gonna break.
Right.
But somehow gets Rick up into the pile driver and then executes the pile driver, and the table doesn't break at all. And they both just kind of take the pile driver. It looks great and falls over the table. And then he grabs the table and throws it down onto Flair. And I thought he was going to jump on it like a madman, but he ends up getting the chair and folds it up and hits a pretty nice looking shot to Flair's head. While that's Flair's head's peeking out of from under the table like a hot dog wiener.
Or as Funk would say, look at that horse tooth banana nose
jerk.
Yeah, I picked up on that.
I loved the horse tooth comment. I thought, oh my God, like I'm not the only one who's thought that. Yeah, it was great. I mean, he just went crazy on him. And I mean, what better way to sell tickets, to your next event? And I mean, it also adds so much excitement, and it certainly was the kind of wrestler that Flair needed to be in there with. So that it was as wild card as it can get. And then you can start figuring out in the meantime how you want to move forward with any of these top 10s.
When was the top 10 like phased out? Like when did that sort of end?
Well, I don't know that WWF ever really used it in an acknowledging kind of way. They had it kind of in the Mark magazines in terms of what people were perceiving as contenders, but
okay,
WWF never used it in terms of, where are you on the contendership? Well, you were number 3 last I checked, and
okay.
So they never really acknowledged it, not at all like the NWA did or WCW did, which I always liked. I always thought that added something to it. But yeah, in this case, I love the way that Rick uses it as a means for like, look, like this is my obligation as champion. And you don't fall into that. And this is why. Yeah, I'm gonna make a little comment about it, but like that's because I'm Ric Flair. I'm the fucking champion. Like I'm that guy, And then for Terry to have his crazy Texas moment of being kind of senile. You say I'm not good enough. Here's he's
Right.
just like, what flashback did he go into here? Like
I felt that energy when he was like, I was like, let's see, he might have hit a nerve on that one or something.
Totally.
Well, this would set up. So, and by the way, really quickly, this took place in Nashville, Tennessee. What this does basically is it puts Flair out of commission for a little bit. It gives Funk the opportunity to kind of get reintroduced to fans that maybe weren't familiar with him. Has a quick little run with Ricky Steamboat at a Clash of Champions, which we actually, Paul and I talked about, I think, in our inaugural episode.
Oh, right. Wow.
Or maybe the episode number 2. So go back and listen to that one. But what that set up was because Funk was not in the top 10, he would go on to wrestle a bunch of jobbers throughout the NWA run, just a bunch of guys to kind of rank himself up to get into number 10. And then he had a match between Steamboat and himself, and which Steamboat won by disqualification. Lex Luger, who factors into this towards the end, came in and that set up his whole heel turn, which was very dramatic. Again, listen to that episode. But what this did was it also gave Flair an opportunity to rest up. They sold this whole neck angle that he broke his neck. Flair comes back in July of 1989 to have a match with Terry Funk at the Great American Bash. This was in July 23rd in Baltimore, Maryland, Glory Days, as they called it. This was a wild match.
It looked like a real slobber knocker, dude. It was a bloody match.
It was a hard hitting.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys are punching each other. Paul, like there were moments where Flair was punching Funk in the face, and he will do this in future matches as well.
Yeah.
At some point, it just sort of becomes like a boxing match. And, again, I'm like amazed by the physical talent of these guys that they can switch fighting styles, but also not hurt each other in the process of doing it. And like, how do you call that out? Like, we're going to have a little punching match right now, but obviously don't freaking hit me, knock me out or anything. And I'm like, wow, the fact that they can kind of switch on a dime like that was very impressive to me. And also impressive the amount of blood and everything that they lost that match.
Yeah, these are two of the masters, absolute masters at this. And whether it's planned out or not, or just ends up organically occurring on the fly, which very well could be as well. There's such an immense amount of trust, but also respect, which that goes into. But you understand, you're feeling that intensity build and build and build as you're doing something. So then you start feeding into it more and more. I mean, it truly is addictive. I mean, the whole bit of that is addictive. And so when you take two masters at the top of their game, I mean, they could have done anything. They really could have done anything, and it would have been great. But they, like you said, they go out there and literally put each other through this slugfest, melee, brawl. And yeah, they can adjust to each other. That's the thing that was always the reoccurring theme with Terry for me, was that, sure, his bumps and this and that can be perceived as silly, which I think adds just immense entertainment to everything that he does.
Agreed. Totally agree.
But when it comes to his persona and his attitude and his execution, it was always like just 1,000%, and also in committing to the realism of it. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about watching his work, because it's still, it's so consistently great that I know that I'm going to be taken on a ride no matter how many times I've seen it. And I'm going to buy into what I'm seeing no matter how many times I've seen it. It's like, it looks so good. It's so real. Like, how did that not hurt? Come on. Like, he punched him right in the face.
Yeah, right in the face. And as many times people love to talk about, and I am a part of that group, they love to see certain moves from Ric Flair, right, where he flops over the ropes and he does that angle where he gets him up on the top and
gets thrown off,
gorilla press. Right, it's classic Flair. There is equally classic Funk isms going on through this, taking that fall over the side of the rail that he does countless times, but or getting in fans' faces, swinging at fans' faces without hitting them. Right. He's got this magic about him. This match in particular, it's about a 20-minute match. It culminates with Flair getting a pin on Funk, which at this time now, Corey, Gary Hart, who we've talked about on this show before and we will continue to talk about again, manager, but so much more than that, talker, promo deliverer, just amazing mind for wrestling. He's aligned with Funk. He's about to form a group called J-Tex.
Okay.
Because Gary Hart also represents Great Muta.
Yeah.
So Great Muta comes out at the end and sprays Flair in the face, causing a beatdown. Sting, who has a rivalry with Muta at the time, comes out to make the save. And now we've got Sting and Flair aligned.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner and still World Heavyweight Champion, Nature Boy, Ric Flair.
The green right in Flair's eyes. And now Funk is taking over on the Nature Boy. And Muta too. They're both after him in here. Flair has won the match, but Funk with Gary Hart and the Great Muta. It's from the referee right out to the floor. They got the World Championship belt. Flair has won the match. Both men are a bloody mess. And with Muta and Hart in there, it was Hart who came to the ring with Terry Funk to begin the match. That was the big surprise that Funk was talking about. They're trying to hurt him. I mean, permanently put him out. Muta was holding him. They're going to pile around him on the chair. That'll snap his neck. That'll break his neck here. There's that Dillinger. There's security. God, Dillinger's a civilian. He got in to stop that. Muta gave him the karate kick. Wait a minute. Muta now and Funk double teaming on Sting. But Flair is back up. Flair now is back up, fighting with Muta. Downstairs, upstairs, the bloody champion. And the challenger hooking it back up again. Oh my God, what a brawl we've had. No control at all right now, completely out of control.
Okay, so that's what brings Sting into on Flair's side at that moment, and I'm like, oh my God, Great Muta, oh my God, it's Sting, like, you know, I mean, I remember these guys, and I was like, oh, this is wild, and we're gonna come back to it, but I just want to jump ahead to the finale. Was that Gary Hart was also kind of trying to stop Funk from shaking Ric Flair's hand and everything?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
we'll talk about that when we get there. I'm piecing things together.
So Gary Hart forms this group called JTEX, which, Paul, do you remember what JTEX stands for?
I was going to ask you the same thing. I figured it was like, do they all have Texas ties? That's the Tex part?
Well, it's Japan and Texas.
Oh, that's
Japan and
right.
Texas.
Okay.
Right. Which, not gonna lie, I didn't figure that out until about a week ago when I started doing research on this.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, doy.
I was like, JTEX? Is it like for full absorption? What is the...
I know. I'm like, Calvex? Is this something you put on a cold sore? Carmex?
Seriously.
What is it called?
Well, so how long had Muta been in the States wrestling at that point then?
So Muta made his premiere as well that same year in NWA. He had been around for a while, and again, we talk about this on an early episode. Actually, that was the first episode, Paul. That was the first episode where was Sting and Muta.
Oh, that's right.
And we talked about that, and then the second one obviously was go back and listen to those episodes, guys. But yeah, Muta and Funk were aligned. They were this little group with Gary Hart. That set up what we're about to get to now, because basically, even though Flair got the win, it continues the storyline, and Funk is, egging on Flair. They have brawls throughout Worldwide Wrestling and all the other shows that TBS is showing in regards to NWA. There's an incident in September of 89. So we jump ahead a couple months, right? We jump into September of 89, and Sting and Flair are wrestling Dick Slater, who's subbing for Terry Funk because Terry Funk is injured, right? At the hands of Flair, he gets a branding iron on his elbow, which we'll talk about that promo in a moment too.
That is good.
But Flair and Sting wrestled Dick Slater and the Great Muta at Clash of Champions 8. And that culminates with Funk coming out to interfere and the infamous, beyond infamous, plastic bag incident where Terry Funk puts a plastic bag over Ric Flair's face to suffocate him. Your thoughts? Corey, we'll start with you.
I mean,
and Paul's brought props to this, by the way. He has a plastic bag.
So this is the Sting Funk brawl, right? Is that what this is?
So this is right before the Sting Funk brawl. This is like a couple weeks prior to that.
Okay. I mean, again, I'm just sold on everything. I'm flabbergasted and I'm sold, and it's just I don't know what's gonna happen, truthfully. And I think it's from the selling of Terry Funk and Sting, everyone who's involved in everything. Again, I like the wrestling aspect, but I like the drama. I think I'm really liking the drama in between.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I mean, didn't see it coming. I'll say that.
It's so heightened. Paul, had you ever seen an angle where a guy put a plastic bag over another dude's head up until this point in 89?
No, but when I first saw it, I was like, he stole that from me, because I used to try and do that to my brothers. we used to play.
To your brothers what?
To his head. We used to play rough.
Oh,
oh
my God!
Yeah, but we'd use a pillowcase or something,
Not dangerous at all.
No, come on. Yeah, see, you did it. We all did it.
We all did it.
Yeah,
that's why they had to put a label on it, because somebody eventually died.
I would like to think, someone did put a label. We tear that tag off. I would like to think, and this is just the mark that I am for professional wrestling being portrayed as reality, and knowing that so much of it is, I would like to believe that Rick had maybe an idea, but wasn't certain that this was going to happen.
Right.
Either which way, he certainly sold it great in the sense that there's always a bit where he almost is still trying to get it, like he has like his hand on there, like he doesn't, like it's almost like he doesn't fully trust it. And I wonder if that's because he legitimately didn't know that it was going to happen, or because he just also knows that Terry Funk is a wild man, and I need to have my own emergency brake in the event that, you know,
he goes off script.
Yeah. And, you know, so who knows, but just the whole, but then I think as Rick stumbled to the outside and the bag stayed on his head, it was like, okay, it's like, there's no doubt here. He trusts it. Because otherwise you'd be like tearing that thing off. But I just love, I love the chaotic violence of it, but just also how practical it is too. It's not like he's doing the branding iron, which not all of us have at our disposal, or the bullwhip.
But there's there's plastic bags everywhere.
You know,
it's legit.
So
it feels legit.
It literally makes me wonder what siblings learned to do this. Not putting a dark cloud over the promo. It's just, it's real. It's legit. You know, it's this can really be scary.
Well, this moment causes, it's a little bit, it feels like a little bit of kayfabe, because this moment causes the executives at NWA to fine and suspend Terry Funk. Wonderful promo. They talk about this in a recap. Suspend Terry Funk indefinitely. What does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah.
Because he's being interviewed by Jim Ross, and Gary Hart is there discussing this matter. He's fined, and he's also suspended indefinitely because of his actions.
Was it $100,000?
Yes, $100,000.
Yeah.
The actions taken by Terry Funk go far beyond the guidelines of the sport, beyond the standards we demand of our wrestlers. We are interested in providing exciting wrestling for all of our fans, but Terry Funk's attack will not be tolerated. Terry Funk is hereby suspended indefinitely from wrestling in the National Wrestling Alliance and will not compete in any event under our auspices. It is signed Jim Herd, Executive Vice President, World Championship Wrestling.
How long am I suspended for?
Indefinitely.
How does this Herd or this idiot have the right to suspend me? He can't suspend me. Why doesn't he suspend Ric Flair? For what? I'll show you what for.
This is a legal document. He's suspended as of right now.
He is not only suspended, they are asking for $100,000 fine. Am I supposed to go ahead and sit there and take that? Look at my arm. What about Flair? Get a close-up of that. What about when he repeatedly beat me in the arm with the branding iron? Look at that. And now you expect me to apologize and pay $100,000 fine? No way. No fine. Yes, I bagged him. Yes. And the intent was there, and yes, I would do it again. Don't you kids ever do anything like that. Don't ever do anything like that.
All right, well, right now, officially, he is suspended indefinitely.
For how long is it?
Indefinitely.
This is my livelihood. This is how
you brought it on yourself.
Which is still a ass butt of money. I mean, Jesus. 100,000.
It is an ass butt of money.
Yeah.
And it's also a moment where it's comedy. This is what you talked about earlier, Paul. There's like comedy but drama at the same time. And right. Corey, Terry Funk does such a fine line in this promo of 1 minute, like you're laughing at him because you're like, this guy is complaining about a bruise on his elbow, right?
Yeah.
That Ric Flair caused. It's the smallest little bruise, and he's on the verge of tears because he's so upset. But then Gary Hart is selling the anger, right? So it's a nice balance. What are your thoughts about that promo of Funk finding out that he's been suspended indefinitely? What does that mean?
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it should be, right?
I mean, but that's the balance, like you said, Zach. You know, between the humor and the drama of it. I think it's a perfect balance. I saw the humor in it. I enjoyed the humor in it, but I was also sold on the stakes as well, and what it meant to every, you know, all the parties involved and everything. It, again, without, like, I don't have all this backstory with me, but I can still watch these things and in their individual moments, and because everyone is selling what they need to sell, Terry Funk especially, I understand what the stakes are. I understand what people are upset about, and I think that's a testimony to just his skills as a talker, you know, like as someone who can cut a promo and everything.
Absolutely. I mean, what is going on at this time is not only is Funk like suspended, but then Flair is able to lift the suspension, pays the fine to get him reinstated so he can have a match with him. And we're going to get to that in a second, what that match is going to be. But in this time, Funk has a brawl with Sting, right? Because Sting's being interviewed, and Funk also equally hates Sting. Yeah. Not on the same level. But our good boy Lance Russell, Paul, is interviewing Sting.
Yeah.
And when Lance Russell pops up, I'm like, oh my God, I love Lance Russell so much.
Yeah.
Corey, Lance Russell was just the voice of Memphis wrestling for the longest time.
Absolutely.
And great commentator. And Sting is not, he's not the strongest promo guy, right, Paul? He doesn't deliver like he delivers energy.
Yeah. He gets the intensity notes. But
I wouldn't say he's the best promo cutter, because he's like, I'm having a good time, you know?
Yeah. I love in one of the promos, he's kind of just dancing while Ric Flair's talking. And I'm like, yeah, Sting, you dance, bud. You get there.
You dance with your ADD.
Well, it makes you wonder where he felt the need to add his own how. I mean, it had to be completely lifted off of Flair's woo. But it says just like, I don't even know. Nobody does the Sting how.
Yeah,
you know?
Everyone knows the woo, and you know exactly what it is and where it's coming from. But
right, but you know what I'm talking about? How like Sting does the like, or whatever the hell he does. Like,
yeah,
it didn't get over. I think the way that he had envisioned. Like, I think he had like thoughts of every time he does this and this, people are gonna be like, I don't know. I mean, I guess there's still those hardcore marks that are like, I like Crow Sting.
Were you like Joker Sting?
I love Joker Sting.
I know you do. We're not even going to talk about that.
Okay.
Oh, I remember Crow Sting. I remember what Surfer Sting, I guess. So is this arrow is kind of Surfer Sting now, right?
This is Surfer Sting.
Wait till you get to see Joker Sting, Corey. You'll be like a dog chasing its own tail.
Yeah, you will be like a dog.
But I did always love Crow Sting though, man. I love the Crow, and I was like, yeah, Sting, you do your thing, dude. I love it.
Apparently that was Razor Ramon's idea, right? Did you hear that? That was Scott Hall presented that idea to him. Like,
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And Sting, Surfer Sting was that was Bodie's second Halloween costume, by the way. He was Surfer Sting. I made him a Sting costume
with the rat tail.
With the rat tail. Nice. No rat tail on that.
Okay, good.
I wish.
Oof.
Not the dyed black rat tail, which I'll talk about in just a minute. But I wanted to add. I always thought Sting should add a baby at the end of "ow," so you go "ow, baby." That's what I thought would be better.
Maybe. I mean,
maybe it would have stuck.
Yeah, he could also just cook like a rooster. Yeah, I think that'd be just as over.
So Sting has a brief little brawl with Funk in this segment,
and it's all outside the ring in this one, isn't it? It's all like on the mat or on the floor and everything, on freaking concrete and whatnot.
The best place for a funker.
And we're talking a time when there were no pads on the ground. This is straight up. Concrete.
No, you can tell. Like you can tell it's just like some cloth or something down on top of concrete.
Yeah.
Well, into everybody's life, a little rain must fall, and now comes the time for a downpour with us. Talking about Terry Funk out here. Terry, we respect the fact you are.
Issue. What is the issue?
That's what I want to know.
Is the issue between Myself and Sting are the issue between Ric Flair. The issue is between Ric Flair and myself. What does the Stinger have that I want? He has absolutely nothing. He has no guts. He has no...
Yeah, you better go ahead and do it. If you want to do it now. Sting came out here and Funk had done in a previous interview in a crazy Funk sandbagging, sucker punching, jumped on him and is slamming him on the concrete, hit him with a chair twice, knocks him down on the floor. Terry Funk, you are insane.
So, I mean, this is a great moment to just to see how reckless and wild once again Terry Funk is. There's no plastic bag involved in this match, in this moment.
Well, and he kind of sucker punches Sting, right? And so since he's a heel, is that expected at the time because he's a heel?
I don't think it matters. I think it is expected. I think
you expect him to throw the first punch essentially because he's the heel?
It shouldn't surprise you. You know what I mean? Does it happen every time? No, but it certainly shouldn't surprise you. But I think it always works for Terry because his movements are very rattlesnake-like. And
that's a great way to describe him.
Yeah, he's just, it really is. Before Steve Austin ever became the Texas Rattlesnake, I feel like that is completely owed to Terry and his movements, not just in the ring, but in his persona as well, when he does a lot of these promos, because he, unlike, like you said, Sting, who's full of energy and intensity and sex wax, I think he's always at a 8 or 9 going to 10, right? Whereas with Terry, he'll start out in like the 2s and 3s, and he'll get up to like the 8 or 9s, and then he'll come back down to the 4 and 3s, and then he'll, so he just has such a layering to his cadence and delivery, and it
amazing.
I noticed that
lures you in. He's real.
You can get burned out on like Sting's like who's somebody who has constant intensity, whereas Terry Funk's, like you said, I picked up on that ups and downs. That gives you a roller coaster to go on during the promo or whatever he's doing. I did notice that, and I liked it. And I thought it was more about conserving energy, but I think it's also about showmanship. You watch a movie, and I love the first John Wick, Zach. I know you haven't watched them. I love the first John Wick because the action scenes are at a manageable pace. By the third one, some of these action scenes are like 20 minutes long, and I find myself zoning out, I've
only seen the first John Wick, and that's good enough for me. Shout out to Dean Winters. He's awesome in that movie.
But I think that, if you try to maintain that high, like at an 8 or a 10 the entire time, you get bored with it. You want a roller coaster. You want highs and lows as a viewer.
Yeah, I mean, oddly enough, one of Sting's, his first tag partner was Jim Hellwig, right? Who became Ultimate Warrior. Even Warrior had the ability to shift levels, and I think that's why his promos were iconic.
I agree,
and especially in contrast to. It worked for his level of in-ring skill, and so
yes.
You weren't going to get a crazy long layered match, but you're also going to get more than like a Goldberg match, and so, but it totally worked, especially when they went long, like that match he had with Macho Man at WrestleMania 7 was long, to the point where all his paint has been battered off his face, and he's pouring sweat and he's drenched, so he could go the distance, and just had a very limited move set, but it all worked for what he was. But it was his promos that truly sent him over the top, and I just feel like Sting never quite had that level of promo believability. I always felt it was like later on, and then like I just
His promos were never strong. I totally agree, but his in-ring work was fantastic. And so
Sure.
I think where he, in my opinion, where he excelled was when he sold that match. And what we're getting to, obviously, coming up with Halloween Havoc is unreal, in my opinion, and definitely deserves more praise, I think, than it gets.
I agree.
But before we get to that, though, this brawl that Funk had with Sting was in early October, and then we're jumping right into Halloween Havoc. But before we do that, the I Quit match that culminates this whole storyline was originally supposed to take place before Halloween Havoc. And then suddenly it gets shifted.
Okay.
Because in this recap that I sent Paul and Corey, and by the way, all of the links to this episode, once again, are in the show notes, so go check those out. But in this recap of the Funk Flair rivalry, where you get the promo from Terry Funk and Gary Hart with the, why he's got the busted elbow with the little bruise on it. You're setting up this idea that there's going to be this I Quit match that is coming, but it's going to take place before Halloween Havoc. Suddenly there's this shift, and they do it at the end, which makes more sense, by the way, because it is the end of the chapter.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. Watching it, in the order that I guess it aired, which is how you sent it. Yeah, it makes more sense to have it end with the I Quit versus what happened with the dome, the Thunderdome, electrified Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what ends up happening is it worked out this way, rightfully so. That Halloween Havoc comes up. Fantastic pay-per-view, by the way. Brian Pillman had a great match with Lex Luger. Brian Pillman made Lex Luger look great in that match. And of course the Road Warriors and a lot of the staples of NWA were on that card. But the main event of Halloween Havoc is Nature Boy Ric Flair and Sting with Ole Anderson as their Terminator. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Versus Terry Funk and the Great Muta with Gary Hart as their Terminator.
It is now time for the Thunderdome cage match. Ladies and gentlemen, from Charlotte, North Carolina, he weighs 245 pounds. And for the 6th time, he is the World Heavyweight Champion, Nature Boy, Ric Flair!
Well, Bob, you notice there's no beautiful women around Ric Flair as is normal. He is all business here. If there will be a party, it'll be after this one's over because he has been training hard, he and Sting. The question is, how far will Ole Anderson let it go? Gary Hart has the most to lose by letting it go too far because he makes his living off the productivity of the Great Muta and Terry Funk.
The notes that I'm bringing to this match are Terry Funk looked awesome in this. Like, he looked beefy as hell. This is where I put the note down that Terry Funk looked like he was in great shape. I think this was the best shape that he was in, and then followed by the I Quit match. So that's the hard-hitting facts that I'm going to be bringing to this discussion.
He's got a rockin' bod.
He does. He did.
What a gimmick, though, right? I mean, was this one of the I'm sure this was one of the first cage matches of this scope and scale that you'd seen, though, right, Corey? I mean, this is before Hell in a Cell,
or that famous Mankind match where he gets the tooth knocked out of his nose.
That's Hell in a Cell.
Yeah,
before Elimination Chamber. This is say what you will about NWA WCW's production value, but like, they knew how to really shine up the gimmicks,
And
I
it
love
was
that.
really electrified too. Like the top, apparently the top of it's electrified so much so that the stagehands that decorated it, because it's Halloween, and this
Right.
makes sense because I bet you they didn't even think that they thought this was going to be in November, so they're like, oh, we're going to do it for Halloween, go dress that, and
Right.
yet they put it on an electrified fence so it catches fire to the point where the Great Muta has to climb the fence and put it out with his Muta mist. But at one point you do hear him when he climbs, you hear the bzzzt, and he's like, I'm like, damn, that is
really?
real.
So
Yeah.
this was, I would imagine this was similar to if any of you have ever had if any of you have ever been tased by a perpetrator. No, I'm kidding. If you've ever felt like an electric dog fence or the wiring that goes into like keeping livestock or something kind of in, it's not going to electrocute you, but it's almost like a very extreme Uncle Fester's challenge thing. Like what was that? If you play that game, Zach, I'm sure you
Uncle Fester's Quest?
No, well,
that game ruled.
No, the one where you like sit down and you put your hands around the steel thing and it shakes you like it's supposed to be an electric chair. And you're like,
I did that.
Yeah,
I did that. I thought you're going to compare it to licking a 9-volt battery to make sure it was still working.
I mean, you could that or a toad's ass, either one, and I think you'll be fine either way. But this seems like it would have given a good little buzz shock that probably didn't feel great.
Judging by Muta's reaction, it seemed like it did, which was cool.
Well, this match is, and you're right. This is interesting because this is a precursor to so many matches we got used to seeing in a ring, right? And years prior to this, there was that like a Tower of Terror or Tower of Doom match where there were like three matches.
World War III.
That
was later.
Before that was later, but they did it earlier, like I think in '87, with Jimmy Garvin and a bunch of other people. But this match in particular was so unique, and the heels and the faces were so well defined, right? And Ric Flair, in my opinion, was at the highest level he's ever been as far as being a face. Like he was the most popular he's ever been as a quote unquote good guy, right? And Sting was beyond a shadow of a doubt the most popular wrestler in the NWA at that time. And the special referee of this match is Bruno Sammartino.
Yeah.
Which is really, I mean, he's another, Corey, he's a legend in this business.
Pittsburgh legend.
I kind of goofed on him a little bit because he took over UWF and was like, this organization is going to be about no steroids. And people are like, okay, cool. But anyways.
Me or this guy?
Right. Bob Caudle and Jim Ross are on commentary, and Bob Caudle was so good with Jim Ross on commentary. I love Bob Caudle. I think he's an underrated commentary guy. But the match was, there's two promos that happen before the match takes place, and I love that Funk says, "We're gonna introduce the 10,000 watt boogie." Like he talks about a new dance move. Yeah. The 10,000 watt boogie and fried chicken. We're going to introduce fried chicken. Right?
I want to say one thing. Winston Churchill said, never say die. Gary Hart says electrify. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to start a new dance craze here in Philadelphia. It's going to be the 10,000 watt boogie, featuring Ric Flair and Sting here tonight. And besides that, we're going to introduce something new. Fried chicken. I'm talking about Ric Flair when we push him up against that electrified fence.
And of course, you got Tommy Young as the referee. Tommy Young is my favorite referee of all the times. He's one of the guys that helped put out the fire.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right? I saw him climb. Yeah, exactly.
And so Ole Anderson and Gary Hart are the quote-unquote Terminators. So the rules of this match are there's no rules,
right?
Even though it's a tag match. And they go by Australian rules, but then it turns into a Texas death match, according to Jim Ross. Texas Tornado
What
match.
are the Australian rules?
I'm like, what the hell are Australian rules? You mean like legit tag rules where they're just tagging in each other? But what's interesting, when they come to the ring, Jim Ross is talking about the fact that Ric Flair means business. He's got no women with him. He's not coming to, he's not coming to the pomp and circumstance, even though he kind of still does. He means business, right? And then this Terminator idea is because the match has no pinfalls, no submissions. The Terminator is your handler who's outside the ring who has a towel in his hand, and when he throws in the towel, that's when you guys have given up.
Got it.
That's
Yeah.
the Terminator.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to point out before we have a more discussion about it and get you guys' general thoughts. Did you guys pick up on the fact that Jim Ross at one point is talking about Sting? He says, Sting, the youngster from Venice Beach, California, started out as a member of a team called the Blade Runners. So the fact that he gave his original tag team a shout out was pretty cool.
Interesting.
Because WWF was definitely not doing that at that time. They wouldn't even acknowledge any other organization.
Right.
But then Jim Ross throws a little zinger in there. He goes, I think his partner has not progressed like this kid has.
Oh, cold, Jim.
Great drop kick by Sting, the youngster from Venice Beach, California. Started out as a member of a team called the Blade Runners. I think his partner has not progressed like this kid has.
Well, and you talk about coming a long way in a short period of time.
Cold-blooded.
Paul, I think you said it perfectly in describing Ultimate Warrior. They're very different styles, and very, very unique characters, the Ultimate Warrior and Sting. I wouldn't compare the two, other than the fact that they both wore face paint. I think they're two totally different wrestlers.
Right.
I wouldn't even put them two together. Like and with my limited knowledge, I never in my head kind of put them as the same sort of type of wrestler or a carbon copy, I should say.
Yeah, and this match itself is brutal as hell.
Yes,
There's amazing spots throughout.
There's bodies flying, bodies hanging, bodies electrocuted.
Corey, go. Yeah, go
awesome.
for it. Go for
it.
Dude,
it's freaking awesome. I lamented the fact that at one point Funk was hanging there and the stupid Halloween decoration was in the way, which again, it all makes sense now that you told me that this was supposed to be after in November. I think the set decoration really messed up on it. But yeah, Terry Funk's hanging there. We don't even get to see it, but you can see his legs and stuff. And you're like, oh my God, there's
upside down.
It got me excited to want to be there. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I will say really quickly, I think this is always intended to be a Halloween Havoc match. However, I totally agree with you. The camera angles were terrible, especially for that one spot in particular where Flair has Funk upside down and something's going on.
Yeah, something's
happening.
The
way the camera's pointed, you can't see anything
I
happening.
think Corey hit it. The set dressing must have been a sort of a last minute adjustment because you would think the cameraman would have. Yeah. So I feel like that threw off a lot of things production wise.
But like we got Sting swinging on a rope, through the match. I mean, and then at some point Sting I think was stuck, and I didn't understand why, and I think they actually had to help him. So I guess that wasn't planned. Maybe I don't know if it was a boot or something was stuck in there. But I mean, Terry Funk's rocking and rolling. It's another one that I was like, this is a slobber knocker. This is it's brutal, but you can't look away. You're completely invested in it. But I did not understand what the Terminators were and kind of why they were sort of walking around and all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't take anything away from my utter enjoyment of the match.
That's all that matters. And it's one of those matches that doesn't get spoken about enough. I think it seems like things get kind of forgotten about post 91 sometimes, I guess, as WCW started to really take shape. And it stinks because this was really such a fun gimmick match that is like equal parts pay-per-view blow-off match and, bad haunted house. And I could watch this all day. I mean, it's just the spectacle alone. And so mistakes notwithstanding, those add to the magic of this match. And those add, quote unquote mistakes in a match. They really, unless it's an injury, unless it's an injury in that case, you have to accommodate the injury, whether it's stop the match immediately or cut stuff out.
Right.
Otherwise, mistakes become such a gift for a match because it thus propels whatever is happening in that moment to be real, because it is. It's like you didn't plan for this, right? So
Right.
And getting Sting's foot stuck in there kind of slowed it down a little bit. So kind of almost built up the tension of when he finally does, do that swing, because if he had done it like right away, you didn't have as much tension build up because he kind of got his foot stuck.
Yeah.
So the whole time I'm watching, I think Muta was wrestling Ric Flair at the time. And so I'm like, what's Sting doing? What's Sting doing? Sting's going to do something. Ref's helping him out. I'm like, okay, but still I'm like kind of watching Muta, but I'm looking up at Sting. And then all of a sudden,
Douglas Fairbanks.
I rewound it, man. I was like, holy crap.
So what was amazing about this moment is because, where Funk is upside down hanging and he's got a booger hanging out of his nose. It's very dramatic. Flair at this point has got Muta on the ground and he locks in his figure four, but then he doesn't have a really good hold on it. And that's when Sting gets caught up in the cage. And that allows Muta to get a reverse spinning toe hold on Flair, where he's like upside down pulling his neck back. Yeah. It's so dramatic. And he holds it on Flair for a really long time. And Flair is getting his ass handed to him in this moment.
Yeah.
And Funk gets free. They're going to give Flair a pile driver, and they do. And it's that moment where you're like, oh my God, is he going to break his neck? Right? Because that was just so dramatic. And Sting does get free, and he splashes on Funk. And at that point, Muta, Jim Ross makes the totally racist comment about Muta might be a fried wonton.
Fried wonton. I heard that. I was like,
Jim Ross.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, of course, JR is going to come out with that.
And now Muta goes up the cage. Will he touch the wire? That's electrified. He's right up on top of it. Muta would like to, I guess, go to the land of the rising sun right now. He may be fried wonton if he gets onto that top very strongly.
Fried wonton.
Because Muta's crawling, he's on top, and now Muta is up there. Did they turn the electricity off? Because it seemed like he could then start climbing up.
I think they did.
I think they did too. To lend itself to some more high-flying adventure.
Speed duck.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So what is great about this exchange, though, is because at this point you think the match is going to end because Flair gets Funk in a figure four and Sting splashes on him twice. Paul's losing his shit over the fried wonton bit. It's racism in wrestling goes hand in hand sometimes.
Put it to an Oklahoma to prove how much of a hillbilly.
Right. Yeah, he's got to throw that in there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, because he also says he's climbing all the way to the rising sun. And I was like, oh no.
Which isn't like a big deal, right? I mean, I think
no, but then he throws the fried wonton one in there. You're like, you had to go to the fried wonton, didn't you?
You had to go to a fried wonton.
This match is sweet. It is sour. And it is being brought to you in the Power Hour.
Oh. Muta is a panda. He is a panda. The Panda Express.
Moving like a ninja in the night. Muta. Ow.
Move over, Shokasugi.
With that mast, he's like an Oriental dragon.
Oh, we'll get to the Dragon Master too at the end. But so Muta, so Funk is in the figure four. Sting nails 2 splashes on Funk, and you're like, he is getting decimated. But the match continues. It keeps going to the point where the ending is somewhat wonky because Gary Hart and Ole get in the ring with their respective towels in their hand, and Ole hits Hart, which causes him to lose his towel, which Ole points out to Bruno Sammartino, who, by the way, Bruno Sammartino hits Muta for no reason, and the crowd goes wild, and you're like, that was kind of heelish move by Bruno Sammartino.
There's tension at the very beginning. If you notice, Muta bumps into Sammartino, and Sammartino shoves him. And I was I was like, damn, because that's when I first realized, like, oh, that's Bruno Sammartino. You don't push him around. Yeah, because I was like, is this Gene LaBelle? And then, it was, so I thought that was interesting.
No, that. You know what? That sells why he did it at the end, maybe why he hit him in the face, because there was so much tension
But it seemed like such a mini subplot that I don't think anyone paid attention to it.
No, and I don't think even people. It really doesn't matter at the end that
No.
Gary Hart gets the
Well, I was
towel
gonna say
knocked out.
30 years later, we're talking about it, so maybe it was a good little
That's
subplot, you
true.
know?
There you go,
It's
Corey.
true.
Nice. But that's the match. The match ends with Sting and Ric Flair winning because Gary Hart gets the towel knocked out, quote unquote, giving up the match, being the Terminator to throw in the towel.
Tremendous conclusion to this event, but certainly not without some controversy, Bob.
I saw the commotion afterwards, and everyone's like, oh, or I think JR was like, it wasn't fair, you know, like it didn't count or something like that, you know, because I was like, okay, so it got knocked out of his hand, and then they kind of went with that. As a match, I thought it was super fun, but I know we're watching it for Terry Funk, but I thought Great Muta had a really good showing that match. I mean,
Great
I
Muta's
think
amazing.
Terry Funk did too, obviously, but I thought for me, I was kind of tuning in on Muta and some of the stuff Sting was doing.
Yeah.
Great Muta is ridiculous. He's amazing.
Yeah. No, I think he just recently, is he still going? He just recently retired for good, I think.
He just retired, yeah.
I mean, that's, again, to Terry, he's just one of those amazing talents that can drive a story forward based on his selling alone, that in a match like this where he gets just the utter tar beat out of him, he's still, it helps. He gets more over, like, you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't need all this stuff. He doesn't need to be the one, you know, in command the whole time. And he just has that real gift of making someone else look as great as they can possibly be at his expense, you know? So,
I mean, he made Ric Flair look... I just have to point out the fact that Ric Flair throws him over the top rope at one point onto the ground like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah.
Throws him over the rope.
Because there's a big gap between the cage and the mat and everything. And he just crumples.
Do you know why Ric Flair takes his back? Like, this is a little unrelated, but like, so when Ric Flair takes his backdrops, do you notice why he takes them different like that?
Is it always because of his back injury?
Yeah, because he broke his back in that plane crash. Yeah, and like ever since that, he's always taking his back bumps kind of on the side.
But to have that awareness in the ring at all times.
I think it just becomes absolute muscle memory habit in a way at that point, depending on who's giving you the backdrop, right? But yeah, Terry seemed to always throw himself out knowing he was the sack of potatoes.
He made that look so flawless. Every time he takes a bump, he is a flawless bumper.
Well, that's something that they used to grill into my head, was attack the mat when you bump. Attack the mat when you bump. And when you sell big, but attack the mat. Like, that was always something that was very key in that training, was to attack the mat when you sell or when you take a bump. And he would attack everything that he bumped into. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, wait till we get to the final match, but to talk about attacking a table, but or surfing a table, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I threw in a promo of Funk's Grill post Halloween Havoc, which sets up the I Quit match. Terry Funk had a segment throughout this summer as well, throughout this year, his that we mentioned in the onset of this episode. You know, like Roddy Piper's Pit or the Snake Pit. It was the wrestler doing their promo, interviewing people. He interviewed the Steiners in that one. You can look that up on YouTube.
So it's almost like the evolution of a promo, essentially.
Yeah. It's an interview segment. It gives more, in my opinion, Paul, you can elaborate. It gives more depth to the story that's going on.
Sure.
or allows the wrestlers to do something a little bit different, but also still be showcased on the show.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a way to keep someone active if they're not wrestling a bunch. But in this case, I think it was them understanding that Terry's so engaging and that he could literally have a broomstick on his show and it would be an entertaining segment, you know. So it's also a means, not that Rick needed help getting over, but oftentimes it can also be a means to help get somebody over. Whereas somebody, you know, a talent may not be able to have microphone in hand and look directly into the camera and get themselves over. Oftentimes it helps to interact with somebody because then you're taking the attention off of yourself for a bit. Whereas when it's just camera here, it's like all the attention's on you.
Right.
But yeah, it wasn't used in that sense either. I think it was just possibly Terry having an idea and them saying, yeah, let's see what happens with it, you know. And I don't know how long it lasted.
Well, I think he did a few more after he quote unquote turned face.
Okay.
After the I Quit match, but this one in particular that I sent to you guys, this Funk's Grill from November 3rd of '89. It's you know, roughly 10 days before their I Quit match. It's interesting because Funk has Ric Flair on the grill,
right,
to deliver promos against each other back and forth.
And it's got a great little joke. Terry Funk tells a great little joke about quit while you're ahead at the beginning, which was supposed to be cheesy, but really, I enjoyed it.
Once upon a time, there existed a head. No arms, no body, no legs, just a head. And that head prayed for a miracle. Well, that miracle took place. That head turned into a tomato, a rotten tomato. Do you simple-minded people know what the moral of this story is? The moral of this story is quit while you're ahead. And that goes for you too, Ric Flair. Quit while you're ahead and while you still exist. Do you understand me, Flair?
And the whole time he's like, you know, I'm going to be talking to Ric Flair, and they have a picture of Ric Flair. And I was like, oh, it's probably just a picture of him. But no, it's like actually Ric Flair, like waiting patiently to talk. And I was like, I was like, that's kind of cool. Like Ric Flair's not trying to talk over him or anything like that. Like you could tell that there was an admiration there because he's like, he's not going to ruin it for him. So he waits to talk. And I was like, oh, Ric Flair's there the entire time that Terry Funk is talking. Right. And he's not even like doing woo or doing anything. Like he's being respectful to Funk's Grill, you know? And I was like, this is cool. I dug it. And I liked the interaction. And Paul, to what you're saying about like sort of the floating head promo versus this back and forth, because Zach did send us, you know, I think it was the Great American Bash promo that Funk did. And that is a more of a just in your face, like, and I could, the energy level for both were so different, like Funk's Grill versus just that head promo. And I really enjoyed the back and forth between him and Ric Flair in this one.
Oh, definitely. What's on the grill?
You know, Terry Funk, I understand you all too well. I sit here and you wonder why am I here tonight? How could I turn down the opportunity to be on the most prestigious talk show in the history of American television, Funk's Grill? Me turn that down? Not a chance. I'm here and I'll make me a star, pal.
Pal, I will make you a star because I will make you look so foolish today and also on November the 15th. You see, I don't want your belt, that gold belt. I don't want your family. I don't want your money. I want something that's more valuable than that ever will be. I want your pride. I want to take that from you in Troy, New York. I want to see those tears coming out of your eyes. I want to see you running from this old dog with those rabbit pellets or raisins falling all over the ring. That's what I want. I want you to crawl underneath that ring, and I want to throw you the microphone, Flair, and I want you to scream oh so loud, I quit. I quit, Terry Funk. You are the better man. And I want to see your arm reach up from out from underneath there in shame and shake my hand out of fear. Can you understand that, Rick, or not? Do you know how much I hate you?
This is a perfect way to set up the I Quit match, which, like I said earlier, got bumped ahead or bumped past Halloween Havoc, which again makes way more sense to have this be the final.
So if this played out the way they originally intended, they would have wrestled in this I Quit match, and then if it played out the exact same way, and Ric Flair makes him say I quit, then they would have gone on to the dome match. I mean, this just seems such a more logical. This seems more logical of a conclusion than that.
Will you quit in a cage?
It's like, but I already quit.
Will you quit on a train?
Yeah.
Will you quit with a fox? Will you quit with a mouse?
Yeah.
In a box? So really quickly, by the way, the JTEX Corporation is about to pick up a few new members, which will be kind of introduced at the end of this of the upcoming match we're about to talk about. On November 15th, 1989, New York Knockout Clash of Champions 9 in Troy, New York. The main event, Terry Funk versus Ric Flair. World title on the line, I quit. Or as Gordon Soley would say, 5 letters, 2 words. I quit.
5 letters, 2 words. I quit.
Gordon Soley was on commentary with, I never forget that. To this day, it's grilled in my brain.
I heard it.
It's Jim Ross and Gordon Soley on commentary. Tommy Young is the referee. This was an I Quit match. We hadn't seen an I Quit match in a really long time. In fact, I was doing a little bit of research. The first I Quit match, according to Wikipedia, is Tully Blanchard versus Magnum TA. That was the first I Quit match back in the day.
On television or for what year would that have been, right? Because we covered our own with Funk and Lawler.
Yes, we did. So as far as the NWA is concerned.
Okay, NWA. Right? Okay. Just wanted to clarify here that Terry is well versed in the I Quit match. He's well versed in making dogs squeal and making them suck on eggs. He is well versed in boxing chickens, boars, cheetahs. It doesn't matter. He will take anyone to the limit and make them say, I quit.
Or as Ric Flair would say, that's humiliating. That's disgraceful.
So did they bring this back for Terry? Basically, like, if it wasn't Terry Funk, would it have been an I Quit match, or was this done for him specifically?
In my opinion, Paul, you can counter this. This is the only logical way to end this feud. It's a 7, almost 8 month feud, right? That it keeps going back and forth.
Only other stipulation that would fall into play after this would be a loser leaves town match.
There you go. Yeah.
Because then that way that one of them is staying and one of them is going to be gone. And then that's that. So with an I Quit match, hey, we just know that you made him say I quit.
Okay.
But you're still both here. And there's still grumblings of that loss on the surface. So this could happen again. You know what I mean? But when you take a loser leaves town match, ideally that's like one of these guys is going to leave for a while. Until that masked, mysterious stranger shows up out of nowhere somewhere down the road. I can't quite pinpoint it, but his moves look sort of familiar. There's something to the way this... Have I seen this young man before? This Star Bean...
This Midnight Rider?
Yeah.
Who's this Midnight Rider?
This yellow dog...
Shout out to our buddy Diallo Jackson, by the way, who loves the Midnight Rider angle with Dusty Rhodes. That's one of his favorite angles from back in the day. So,
Midnight Rider, yeah. So
we're gonna have to cover that.
Yeah.
This whole thing though is they're building up Funk as the pride of Texas.
Right.
So he's got Texas on the line. Flair, is saying he'll never do it. And there's promos ahead of time where.
Oh yeah, Terry.
Flair,
I don't care about that gold. I care about your pride. It means a lot more.
Yeah,
That's
I like
right.
that. He's like, yeah, I don't care about the belt, and that's, I'm taking the one thing that you have, and that's the pride. I was like, that was cool. I got that. I understood what was on the line for Ric Flair, and I think there's something special about it not being about money, not being about in the eyes of, for me, not being about the belt or something. It's just down and dirty. I want to take your pride. And I think that's very relatable. And I think that's what made it exciting.
Sure.
Now, Terry Funk, we know what's coming down. It's called I Quit. That means two great champions are going to walk that aisle tonight, and they're going to get in that ring with one thing in mind, and that is to make, now think about this, to make the other say, I quit, on a nationally televised program before millions of people. That's humiliating, that's disgraceful, that's the end. Think about it. National television, I quit. Well, I look at it like this, Terry Funk. I'm the world champion, the title's on the line, but if I say I quit, I'm done. For you, you've got nothing to lose. You're the pride of Texas. You're one of the true greats on this sport. So tonight, Terry Funk, it's no man's land. It's a crash course. But the bottom line is, woo, to beat a man, you gotta beat the man. Woo!
It's interesting, though, because the whole angle with Flair is like, this is about one particular thing. You got to have guts. You're gutless if you don't do this, essentially, is what he's saying. In the Havoc entrance, Flair comes to the ring with no quote-unquote fanfare, no beautiful women with him. In this entrance, when he comes to the ring, Gary Michael Capetta is introducing the wrestlers, of course.
Love it.
Gary, the voice of NWA, beautiful announcer, just the best voice. Yep, and then I will actually put links to Gary Michael Capetta's book in our show notes as well if you want to check that out, because it's a great read. But Flair comes to the ring with three ladies, which I thought was interesting.
Ooh.
I'm like, wait a minute, this is his heelish side coming out a little bit. And then he's coming down the ring, he's, hugging people, shaking people's hands. At one point, people are grabbing onto him, and you can hear him go, all right, like, get your hands off me. I know it's not intentional, but part of me is like, this is planting the seeds. This is planting the seeds for the future heel Flair that we all want to see because he's so great at what he does.
Yeah.
Anyways, Funk comes out first, by the way, to the ring to the theme song, his wonderful theme song that I will put at the beginning of this episode, Man with Harmonica, from Once Upon a Time in the West, Sergio Leone, Ennio Morricone, in my opinion, my favorite Western of all time.
I think that might have been Toots to Limon on the harmonica in that Ennio Morricone song. Yeah, because it's a chromatic harmonica that gets that.
So creepy. So creepy and so good. And you're like, okay, this guy is at the top of his game, Funk, like you said, Corey. I think Terry Funk might be the quote-unquote definition of a butterface, because at this point he's got the $1 million bod with the face that's grizzled and, no offense. I'm just saying. Call it like I see it.
Wrestling fans, the following contest, it is the featured I Quit match. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember, there will be no disqualifications, no countouts. The only way a winner will be decided is when one wrestler says, I quit. Introducing the first participant, Gary Hart presents, from the Double Cross Ranch in Canyon, Texas. He weighs 247 pounds. Terry Funk making his way down to the ring, and as you mentioned earlier, the physical toll that it will take on this man and Ric Flair will certainly put Flair in a precarious position going into the Starrcade, future shot out of the Iron Man tournament. This match with no falls, no pinfalls, no disqualification, Gordon, it's going to be so physical.
The other thing about it that really, in a sense, is awfully sad is we're going to see an end of a dynasty.
From Charlotte, North Carolina, He weighs 245 pounds. And for the 6th time, he is the World Heavyweight Champion, Nature Boy, Ric Flair!
And, you know, this match is a legit brawl. I've never heard chops. I thought I heard chops louder, Paul, in the...
You feel them in this one.
I thought the chops were bad in the Funk Steamboat match. In this, they are beyond black and blue brutal.
Yeah, it's... I think I even have some slight chest...
Yeah, you do.
From my matches recently. Yeah, you definitely... You feel the brutality in this match. I mean, they're laying it all out, and... all for the pride of saying, I made you say you quit, you dog. You know, but yeah, you feel the chops. You don't just hear them, you feel them. And that's, you know, Terry had big hands, you know. I think he's got some mitts to him. And Rick, I mean, you know, he's the master of the chops. And yeah, certainly when you see the effects on the body, it adds to the drama and to the story that you're witnessing, and the illusion of realism. And this is real. And this is still real to me, damn it. Still real to me.
Look, I know that reference. You know, they're punching each other in the face, and they're not pulling back.
I think this is the one where they get into like a boxing match and whatnot. And one thing I did like about this one a lot, because like we didn't have any other wrestlers until the end when it really goes crazy. We didn't have anybody to take away from these two guys here, which is why I think this is a better end for all that, because we didn't have Sting and Muta doing things at the same time. This was just them. And I love Terry Funk going like, bring me that microphone, and he's trying to get Ric Flair to say I quit and everything, and you could feel the intensity. But then I also picked up on something where they were like, the announcers were like, this is like not a first, but this is sort of a rare thing where we have the microphones are in the rink, so you can actually hear what they're saying. And I wanted to ask you guys, like, is that something that was rare at the time, and did that sort of open the door to starting to hear what the wrestlers say, or did they ever fall back on that?
I mean, it might have been for NWA, just because you said this was the first I Quit match on NWA TV, I think, or something. So
prior to this was the first one since Tully Blanchard Magnum TA. So
they could have been saying that as just to add to the spectacle, that this was something new to the viewers, and this is very different, and just so that you can see that this is for real. You're actually going to hear them say I quit, and we're going to get the microphone in there just to make sure, so there's no questions about it. But again, I think that's standard for pretty much any I Quit match, if they're able to do it. Okay. There are certainly independent shows that maybe don't have those capabilities, and in that case, you just tap. You just tap on the mat or drop your arm 3 times.
Jim Ross was selling the fact that they had a wireless microphone.
Yeah. I remember. I was like,
technology.
Oh, that's a big deal. Yeah.
1989 technology. That's pretty huge.
Yeah. And then I look in the background, I see those poor camera guys holding those giant cameras. Like, my God.
Yeah.
And, we also should mention that there was a guy named Doug Dillinger who was their head of security, basically. And he was an integral part in the storylines as well, always kind of being out there to make sure everyone was safe. And Funk would always get in his face when he was kind of flailing around as he would. But he at one point he starts slapping Flair in the face, and then Flair grabs him by the neck, and it is one of my favorite moments in this match because Funk is like smacking him like a little bitch basically, and Funk. And Flair is like, I'm not going to take this shit anymore. And he grabs him by the neck and moves him back. And you see Funk just kind of flail back. It is such a fantastic moment. Those guys were like, we're going to go all out. We're going to lay it all on the table. 5 letters, 2 words. I quit. And Funk is, selling in the microphone, Corey. He's like, you want to quit, Flair? You gutless pig. Maybe that's where I got that from. Anyways, Funk pile drives Flair on the ground, right? on the concrete, no pads. It is more dramatic than the one in May at the Wrestle War on the table, because Flair in that pile driver is like basically doing a handstand with his hands on the ground. This one is like full on. You know, a table gets introduced, which became a staple for you know, wrestling moving forward. But at the time, it was still a big deal. You know, the chops and the stomps and just Funk getting the hell smacked out of him. It's so intense. And what I love, and again, it's something I don't think that's done to this day nowadays, Flair's signature move, the figure 4 leg lock, the move that will break your leg. He does not whip it out until the very end. It's the last move that he does, and he never does it up until that point. He starts to build on it, but I think the crowd wants to see the figure 4, and they never do until the very end. And Funk sells that figure 4 like no one has ever done it before, and I don't think has ever done it since.
No, dude, I was completely into it. You know, Funk's like, yeah, doing his thing, and they're like, if it's one more second longer, it's gonna break his leg. And I'm on the edge of my seat watching it, and I was like, you know, I'm rooting for Terry Funk and everything, but you know, he does at that point, you know, concede.
He's got that thing locked completely in. He's got it deep in there. Gordon, have you ever seen him last this long in a figure 4?
It can be reversed. It can be reversed. But
yes, I quit.
He said it. He said it. I can't believe it. Gary Hart is livid, but Ric Flair has won it.
Gary Hart just can't believe what's happened. He did it. Terry Funk 7.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner of the match, Nature Boy, Ric Flair.
What a great end of the match. And then I even like how it sort of even goes further, and then it gets really exciting. But before it does, I really liked Terry Funk wanting to shake Ric Flair's hand and be honorable, be like, yo, you beat me. But then, you know, his manager, Gary Hart, you know, and I kind of didn't understand what had happened, or kind of, I felt like I blinked or something. Gary Hart kind of knocks out Terry Funk a little bit. And then that's when the giant brawl happens. But for me, the culmination at the end of this whole thing, that is the standout moment to me, was the fact that Terry Funk loses. And he's like, I lost, like a man. And then he goes over and he's like, I want to shake Ric Flair's hand. And then his, you know, manager tells him not to. That was what I loved the most about this entire thing, was the fact that Terry Funk was honorable at the end. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think him and Piper share, is they have like that such a old thread of respect for the industry, for the craft, for the carny aspect of it, the workman aspect of it, the blue collar aspect of it, the survivor aspect of it. There's just such an unconditional love for the purity of it, that win, lose, or draw, or there's no draw, but win or lose in the sake of the match, regardless of where they are from a character standpoint. When they bust something like that out and go to do the honorable thing, like it means so much more too than it being something that's kind of more put on. You know, it means more coming from guys like that, you know. But I love that Gary Hart kept him from that too, because it just adds to the heel.
Yeah,
it's like any time you think this can be a perfect ending and the fans can go home happy, is there a way to sprinkle some heel stuff in there and possibly bring them back for one more tickets, round of ticket sales? Like, come on, like there's got to be a couple more tickets we could sell. So it's always fun to play with that. I love a good heel who relishes being a heel.
I was hoping though, because the way this match ends, like we said, that Terry submits, he says I quit, and then he says you know, Hart's yelling at him, and Terry's like, I promised the fans that I'd shake his hand, right? And then Flair's like, you know, give it to me, come on, you know, and they kind of have their like, I respect you kind of thing at the end. Yeah. And that's when Gary continues to lose his shit. And there's a moment there because, yeah, he goes after Funk. And then at this point now, the Dragon Master, who we're pretty much introduced to, another part of the J-Tex, and Buzz Sawyer will factor into it later on, but it's watered down. But Muta, the Dragon Master, come out and attack Flair, which causes Sting to come out and save the day, basically, try to save the day. And when this does happen, Gary Hart has lost it, and he pushes Funk out of the ring.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's kind of the end of Funk here. I was like, I thought there would be more Funk in this post-madness that happens.
Well, I was hoping, and this is my story building, because Corey loves to story build. He loves to build the story before. He loves to build the story after. What could happen? What could be in this thing? And my story building was that Funk would turn face and align himself with Sting and Flair against Muta, Dragon Master, and then Lex Luger comes out to destroy everybody as well. Really quickly, side note for this Clash of Champions, there was an awards ceremony earlier in the night where Pro Wrestling Illustrated, I believe, was giving out all these awards, favorite wrestler, best wrestler, blah, 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 blah. And Luger was so just pissed, right? That's the other thing too, throughout the course of this year, fueling that Luger thinks he's the best and he's being deprived of what is his, right? This championship. And that's why he comes out and destroys everyone.
Smashes them.
Right? What you have in this moment is Jim Ross and Gordon Solie have to close the chapter on Flair Funk, but also open up the new door to this new storyline, which is going to create the reformation of the Four Horsemen, et cetera, which we'll definitely talk about down the line because it's worth bringing up some great matches in that. But like I said, we toe dip into the 90s occasionally, and we will get into the maybe 1990 for NWA. You know, the heels are kind of dominating. Funk is written off, but the end of this match thing, like the pay-per-view, it's not a pay-per-view, it's a live television broadcast on TBS. Gordon Solie and Jim Ross are closing it out. And I love this. And this is a great way to kind of wrap this whole episode up. They're talking about what happened with Luger and J-Tex, right? But they also say, Gordon Solie says, you have to salute Terry Funk. The Funk family name has been upheld. He is a man of his word. They close out the episode talking about Funk.
We have to salute Terry Funk, his courage and his integrity. He did what he said he would do.
I have to concur with you in regards to Terry Funk. The Funk family name has been upheld. He is a man of his word, but I'll tell you what, words cannot describe the courage of Ric Flair.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a full report Friday night for Gordon Solie. I'm Jim Ross. So long from Troy, New York.
The reason why this is as good as it is, Flair can go with he can go with anybody. Terry Funk elevated this to a whole other level. And this whole storyline that we've been covering from May of 89 to November of 89 is a perfect capsule of what I love about wrestling, what I will always love about wrestling, what got me to love wrestling with the highest passion. If I ever have a moment where I'm like, I need something to bring me back positive, like uplift me, I will put this storyline on just to remind me that anything is possible if you have the right components to it. And this is just a perfect capsule of what wrestling is. For any new fan, I would show this to them. For anybody who's kind of burned out on wrestling, I would show this to them because it'll reignite that passion. And I think it's a perfect way to kind of wrap it up. Your guys' thoughts. Corey, what is your thought about this?
So, I mean, most of the time that I have any sort of, especially with you and Diallo, have any sort of discussions about wrestling, it's usually singular events, solitary sort of things, moments in time. This was really cool to see an evolution, like you said, over the course of like 7 or 8 months. And for me, I grew up reading comic books, and like a lot of Marvel comics and everything like that. I was mostly Marvel or Dark Horse comics. In 1989, I was probably reading the Aliens and the Predator comics over at Dark Horse.
Oh, I was gonna have you jump in a minute.
We'll count that as now. And basically, back in 1989, if y'all were reading comics, man, the Dark Horse Predator series was out. The first one, Concrete Jungle, which was great, and then the Alien series, it was on their second one, and I have all the original issues back home. But what I found interesting about all of this, 2 things. One, it made Terry Funk for me be someone other than just a face that I've seen, a name that I've heard, someone that I've enjoyed in the past, but now I've seen what he's capable of. And I don't just mean in the ring, I mean in selling the storyline. But as a comic book reader, I'm like, I was impressed by how comic booky it is. Whereas like, unlike the Dark Horse comics where you'd read like 4 or 5 issues and that'd be a singular story and they move on to something else. But if you're reading like X-Men, you know, issues they'll have arcs and everything, but nothing ends. It keeps going. And you're peppering in, you know, even if this arc is about Wolverine versus Sabretooth, you're peppering in side stories that are going to turn into an arc later. And I was just sort of amazed at how comic booky it all is. And I say that in the highest possible, you know, yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. And there's just no end to it. But I loved how, specifically for this end of this story arc, I loved the honor of Terry Funk at the end. I think for me, that was the button on this whole thing that I really enjoyed, was Terry Funk wanting to shake, you know, Ric Flair's hand. And then I understand how that also, you know, even though he'd lost, he's kind of a winner at the same time, because it's like he didn't tarnish his family name and all this kind of stuff. But to see him get there through the promos, through the slobber knocker fests, but to see him get to that point, I was along the ride. I was along for the ride the entire time, and that's because of these two giants selling everything, you know. And also, again, I'm such a noob to all this, but little moments that I like is like I'm watching Ric Flair, like, you know, not talk over Terry Funk during his promo cuts. I was like, that's respect right there. That's professionalism right there, and that kind of reminds you that these guys aren't just some brainless goon you know, all muscle. Like, these guys are so aware of what they're doing and what they're saying and how things are perceived, and waiting for someone else's to be done talking. Like, that's respect. So these were the little kernels that I got out of this that I think for me add more to my knowledge of Terry Funk and everything. And thank you guys for having me on. I really appreciate this. I love doing this. This was awesome. I feel like I have a new wealth of knowledge from it, you know? So thank you both for this.
The Territories welcomes you and thanks you as well, young Corey. Now that you've got the Territories in your veins, it's hard to get it out, and it just spreads and spreads. Thank God for YouTube, Daily Motion, all these other means to watch these lost, not forgotten eras, sometimes not lost, rediscovered eras of professional wrestling where it was as real as it could be, and it still is. And so what you see is what you get. It's not oversimplified, it's not overcooked, it's not overproduced. It's just a thing of beauty, you know. So it's an art form that is unmatched, untouched. And when you can see two greats, two absolute masters, legends making magic, it's a joy to watch. And I highly recommend anybody seek out any of the links that we have up for what we've spoken about today. And don't just stop at 89.
Yeah.
Go further back, further back. On one of our episodes early on, we'll cover a I Quit match between Terry and Jerry Lawler in an empty arena, which is you think this one's wild, but so we don't know that Roadhouse was an instant hit. It took a while to find its audience, I imagine.
It did.
Yeah, VHS. Yeah, VHS really made it take off. It didn't have theatrical money. No.
Right. I'm trying to think of what Terry's next film project would he have been in. I know he did the Johnny Knoxville movie way later.
He did.
Was he not in Thunder in Paradise? A couple of those episodes, maybe?
So Terry Funk, really quickly, he was on a episode of a TV show called Good and Evil. He was on Quantum Leap. He was on Swamp Thing, the TV show.
Oh, I remember.
Yes.
That was his next kind of foray, was the Swamp Thing.
He was also on an episode of The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
There you go.
With Bruce Campbell. Yeah, which just had its 30th anniversary like yesterday. I love that show. But yeah, he was in an episode of that.
I would have liked to have seen him have a similar trajectory to Roddy Piper's film career with, you know, it would have been, it definitely was suited for it, but he was as real as it got. He was one of Texas' favorite sons. Certainly makes me proud to be a Texan. And Terry will never be forgotten. He was absolutely just a living legend, and a legend that'll last forever and ever. I'm certainly grateful for all the Terry time that we've had. I'm certainly grateful for all the matches and wonderful magic he's shared and given us throughout the decades. And this has been a lot of fun and a wonderful year. Well, 89, we're just very it's a nice little tribute, but there's so much more Terry out there. So please do yourself a favor and seek it out.
Yeah, as you know, this is the culmination of our month-long crossover Podcasting After Dark, $2 late fee, and now Territory Marks with Roadhouse 1989. So, of course, we got to pull out Terry Funk matches from 89, and wow, what a run he had in 89. I think Gordon Soley said it best when he said you have to salute Terry Funk. And I think this was maybe the best way we could salute him for 1989. But like Paul said, there are so many more matches. I would not be surprised if he continues to come up a couple more times this year.
We might just rename this Territory Marks.
I mean, Territory Marks would actually be a great... So really quickly, because I don't think a lot of people know about this. We do have merch, by the way. Territory Marks does have merch. We got t-shirts.
Yes.
We will have koozies. We will have a lot of other things down the road. But in the meantime, if you want to go get some Territory Mark merch, go to $2latefee.com. The links are in the show notes per usual. If you're new to, if you don't know what $2 late fee is or Podcasting After Dark is, first of all, $2 late fee. Go to $2latefee.com. You might have found Territory Marks on its own on Spotify or all the other across the board, because now it's its own separate feed. For those of you that have just discovered us, thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind leaving us a 5-star rating, well, you'll hear that in the outro too. That would be much appreciated. But we are crossing over to the dark side with Podcasting After Dark. Corey, what's going on with Podcasting After Dark? Can we tease up what's happening in October, or can we just talk about what's happening on Podcasting After Dark?
Yeah, well, yeah, if you just found me, Corey, through this, I hope I didn't let anybody down, but I had a blast, and Zach and I are always talking about cult movies over on Podcasting After Dark. It's kind of the dark shadow of $2 late fee, kind of like how Krampus is the dark shadow of Santa Claus. And we talk about more weirder, bit more rated R films and everything. But we also have a spinoff show as well called TV Obscura, where we dive into weird, obscure shows. And just like $2 late fee, we kind of stick around the late 70s, 80s, early 90s era of things and whatnot. We have our buddy Diallo over there. And October's coming up, so that's going to be a big month for Zach and I. As of the time of this recording, we have not quite locked in what we're going to do because we have two different options, but it's going to be fun either way, and they're going to be awesome movies regardless. And if you want to find out, all our podcatchers and everything, you can go to podcastingafterdark.com. That's podcastingafterdark.com for all our links, Patreon, podcatchers, merch store, etc. And yes, guys and gals, a great way to help any show that you love, any podcast you love, whether it's $2 late fee, whether it's Territory Marks, whether it's Podcast After Dark, whether it's another one. How about right now, just leave one of your favorite podcasts a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you're listening. Any of them, just do it. Karma is great, and they really do help, all shows grow and everything. So support your favorite podcasts and your favorite content producers like Paul and Zach and everybody over here. And Dustin, of course. Dustin, too.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, and I will throw out one more little thing here. If you want to know upcoming news before anyone else, you can sign up to Podcasting After Dark's Patreon and $2 late fees Patreon. Patreon.com/$2 late fee. Patreon.com/Podcasting After Dark. You can go to those and bada bing, bada boom. At the time of this taping, we will be having a fundraiser. I think the fundraiser actually happened already, but there's links to Momentum Wheels for Humanity, and that is the charity that raises money for people with disabilities and wheelchairs, providing wheelchairs for people in third world countries and right here, obviously, in the United States. It's a under the radar kind of charity for people that obviously need support. So consider doing that as well. The links for that are in the show notes too. But as Gordon Soley said, you have to salute Terry Funk. I hope he did his name justice. Paul, I hope we brought a little shine to
it's wonderful.
the Terry Funk name.
Thank you. Absolutely. He's boxing boars up in the promised land, the Heaven's Gates, or wherever he is, sucking on eggs and calling out the dogs that are out there pretending to be angels.
You gutless pig!
So,
I'm Jesus.
That's right. That's right.
Cutting promos in the
you
sky.
Son of a bitch! You chicken lover!
You banana nose, horse tooth.
Yeah, you damn hippie! Look at you.
Whoa!
Yeah, this is not just Jesus versus Jason versus. I was gonna say versus Jason. We're not there yet, but Terry versus Jesus is pretty good.
Terry and Roddy are up there cutting promos on Jesus right now, and
well, they're doing Funk's Grill. They're doing Funk's Grill.
They're doing Funk's
right
Grill
now.
and Piper's Pit.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Jesus is like, I just want a hot dog. Well, no, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you guys. It's always a pleasure to be given and fed funktastic stuff to watch and review and reminisce over. So till next time, I hope we get to all cross paths again. And as Corey mentioned, please leave your kind reviews, or you will be an egg-sucking dog. And yeah, give support to all the shows here that are on the $2 late fee umbrella. So thank you all very much for listening, and love and hug your loved ones a little tighter at night, because you never know when the egg will crack.
Oh, that's really sweet. Till next time, everybody. Play us out. Thanks again for listening to Territory Marks. If you like what you hear, then consider giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're at it, head on over to our Patreon too. The link is in our show notes.
And if you want more 80s nostalgia, go check out my tag partner Zach and our Terry Bam Bam of Ballyhoo, Dustin, over at $2latefee.com, where the faces always win, even in the territories.
Oh, listen, I just wanted to say goodbye and remind you that the good guys always win, even in the 80s.